The crisp, clean air of Lake Tahoe always felt like a balm to my soul. A scent of pine and fresh snow, even in the late spring, clung to everything. I'd been coming to this cabin since I was a boy, and at 47, the memories were so thick in the walls you could practically feel them humming. Every dent in the old wooden floor, every scratch on the fireplace mantel told a story. My story. Our story. My brother, Mark, was 3 years younger than me, and while we shared blood and history, we were worlds apart. Where I was quiet and content with the simple things, Mark was loud, ambitious, and always chasing the next big deal. He'd made a fortune in tech, and with it, he seemed to have acquired a new personality, one that was all sharp edges and zero sentimentality. He arrived a day later than planned, his brand new Range Rover looking ridiculously out of place, parked next to my beat-up old Ford F-150. He slammed the door, and the sound echoed through the tranquil forest. I was on the porch, splitting a log for the fire pit, a task I'd done countless times with my father. I remember Dad telling me once that a good fire was all about patience and a sharp axe. I still used his axe, the one with the worn-out handle that fit my grip like a glove. "Still playing lumberjack, I see," Mark said, his voice laced with a condescending tone. He was dressed in a sleek, overpriced puffer jacket and designer jeans, looking like he'd just stepped off a runway, not out of the mountains. I paused, wiping a bead of sweat from my brow. "Someone's got to keep the fire going, Mark. Not everything is done with an app." He chuckled, but it was a cold sound, devoid of warmth. He walked past me without a hug or even a handshake, and I felt the familiar pang of disappointment. Our relationship had been a slow-motion car crash for years, a series of small arguments and misunderstandings that had finally culminated in a chasm between us. He went inside, and I heard him drop his heavy suitcase with a thud. I finished with the logs and stacked them neatly, the rhythm of the work a calming presence. When I went inside, he was already in the kitchen, rummaging through the cupboards. "What's all this?" he asked, holding up a can of beans. "Didn't you bring any decent food? I thought we were going to cook a proper meal, like we used to." I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "I was planning on making chili, you know, Dad's recipe. I even brought the same spices he used." Mark scoffed, placing the can back on the shelf with a clatter. "Chili? I flew all this way for chili? I was thinking more along the lines of a good steak, maybe some fresh salmon. We could have a proper brotherly dinner, not some camper's meal." The words stung, but I was used to it. Everything was a competition with Mark, a constant need to prove he was better, more successful, more sophisticated. I just wanted to be brothers, to sit around the fire and tell old stories like we used to. But that Mark was gone, replaced by this stranger in designer clothes. "We can still do that," I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. "We can drive into town, get some steak, it's no big deal." He sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Listen, John, I didn't come all this way to play house. I'm here to talk business." I felt a knot form in my stomach. I knew what was coming. The cabin had been a silent point of contention between us since our parents passed. Dad had left it to both of us, but Mark had never shown any real interest in it until recently. He was too busy traveling the world, closing deals, building his empire. I, on the other hand, had poured my heart and soul into this place. I'd spent every summer here, fixing the roof, repairing the plumbing and restoring the old furniture. It was more than a cabin to me. It was a home, a living tribute to our family's legacy. "What business?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He pulled a chair from the kitchen table and sat down, leaning forward, his gaze intense. "The cabin. This place is just sitting here, appreciating in value. It's a gold mine, John. You know how much land is worth in Tahoe now. We could sell this and each walk away with a small fortune, enough to set us both up for life." The words hit me like a physical blow. Sell it? The thought was unthinkable. It was like selling a piece of our history, a part of our souls. "Mark, we're not selling this place," I said, my voice firm. "Dad left it to us. It's our legacy." He rolled his eyes, a gesture that always made my blood boil. "Legacy? Come on, John. This isn't a museum. It's an asset. You live here, right? In the city. You just come up here a few times a year. You're not even using it to its full potential. I take care of it, Mark. I've spent thousands of dollars and countless hours making sure this place stays in good shape. Do you have any idea how much work that is?" He leaned back, a smug look on his face. "Yes, I do, and that's why this is an investment opportunity. You could be making money from this, not just putting money into it. We could renovate it, turn it into a high-end rental property. It would generate passive income, or even better, we could just sell it and split the profits. I've already had a few offers from some real estate developers. They're very interested. Developers? Mark, this isn't a subdivision. This is our home. Mom planted that rose bush out there. Dad built that stone fireplace with his own 2 hands. We can't just sell it off to some strangers. The more I spoke, the more agitated he became. He stood up abruptly, his hands on the table, his face red with anger. Don't be so sentimental, John. That's your problem. You're always living in the past. This is the real world. We're not kids anymore, playing in the woods. We're adults with responsibilities. This cabin is a waste of a perfectly good asset. He gestured around the room, his movements sharp and dismissive. Look at this place. It's old. It's dusty. It needs a complete overhaul. And you know what? I'm not going to spend another dime on a money pit. I have a business to run. I have a life, and frankly, this cabin is holding me back. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with unspoken words and years of buried resentment. The fire in the hearth crackled, the only sound in the room. I looked at Mark, this man who was supposed to be my brother, and felt a profound sense of loss. He wasn't just talking about the cabin anymore. He was talking about me. I was the one holding him back. I was the one who was too sentimental, too stuck in the past. So what are you saying, Mark? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What do you want me to do? He took a deep breath, and his voice when he spoke was cold and final. I'm saying I'm done. I want to sell. And since you're so emotionally attached to this place and I'm a good brother, I'll give you an option. I'll buy you out. You can take the money and you'll never have to worry about this place again. I stared at him, dumbfounded. He was offering to buy me out of our family home. The audacity was breathtaking. Mark, I don't want your money, I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and sadness. I want to keep this place. It's all I have left of them, of us. He looked at me with a look of pure exasperation. Then I'm not going to sell it. I'm going to take it for myself. I'll get a court order. I'll force a sale. I'll do whatever it takes. I want my half, and I'm not going to let you stand in my way. The silence stretched on, a suffocating blanket of tension. It was over. Our bond, our brotherhood, had finally shattered. I felt the heat of his anger, a palpable force pushing me back out of his space, out of our cabin. Get out, John, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Get out of my cabin. Now. I stood there, frozen, the words echoing in my head. He was serious. He was actually kicking me out of the home I had loved and cared for, the home I had poured my heart into. He didn't know it yet, but he was making the biggest mistake of his life. The drive down the winding mountain road felt endless. The sun, once a comforting presence in the clear blue sky, now seemed to mock me, its light glinting off the polished hood of Mark's Range Rover, which I saw in my rearview mirror for a few miles before he sped up and disappeared. The familiar beauty of the landscape, the towering pines, the shimmering lake, the granite peaks, was all a blur. All I could feel was the hollow ache in my chest, a deep, soul-crushing disappointment. He had done it. He had finally pushed me away, not just from the cabin, but from him. I wasn't a sentimental fool, not in the way Mark accused me of being. I knew the world operated on contracts and money and legal documents, but I also believed in something more. I believed in family, in the unspoken bonds that were supposed to hold us together through thick and thin. Our father had raised us on the principle that family came first. He'd taught us to build things, to fix them, to be self-sufficient. He'd taught us the value of hard work and the importance of a handshake. Mark had forgotten all of that. He'd traded it in for a life of luxury and a cutthroat mentality that saw everything, even family, as a commodity. He saw the cabin as nothing more than a number on a balance sheet, an asset to be liquidated for maximum profit. He didn't see the memories embedded in the wood, the ghost of Mom's laughter by the fireplace, the echoes of our father's voice teaching me how to skip a stone across the glassy surface of the lake. I pulled over at a scenic overlook, the one we used to stop at on the way up to the cabin. The view was breathtaking. The lake stretched out before me, a vast sheet of deep blue, its surface calm and reflective. The mountains stood tall and majestic, their peaks dusted with snow. I got out of my truck and leaned against the railing, the cold metal a sharp contrast to the burning anger inside me. I thought back to the last time we were here together, a few years ago. Our father had just passed away, and we were still reeling from the loss. We sat on this very railing silent, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. I remember Mark had put his hand on my shoulder, a rare show of affection. He'd said, "We'll always have this place, John. We'll keep it for Dad." His words had been a promise, a vow, and now he was breaking it. A cold wind swept over the lake, and I shivered, not from the cold, but from the realization that the brother I had known was gone forever. The man who stood in front of me today was a stranger who had just told me to get out of our family home. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Mark. "I'm serious, John. Don't come back. I'm changing the locks. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the buyout." A wave of nausea washed over me. He wasn't just kicking me out. He was sealing the door shut behind me. He was cutting me out of our family's legacy. He had no idea what he had done. He had no idea what I had done. I had been planning for this. I had seen the writing on the wall for years. The way Mark had become increasingly distant, the way he would dismiss our family history as old news. He never came to the cabin, never offered to help with repairs, never even called to ask how I was doing. His only interest was in the property's value, not its significance. So I started to prepare. After my father's death, when Mark was too busy with his new company to deal with the estate, I had handled everything. I paid all the bills, I managed the property taxes, and I handled all the legal paperwork. I had worked closely with Dad's lawyer, a kind and patient man named Mr. Henderson. He had helped us navigate the complex world of wills and trusts. A few months after the funeral, I had a conversation with Mr. Henderson. I told him about my fears. I told him I was worried that Mark would one day try to sell the cabin. I knew he had a volatile nature, and I was afraid he would one day try to use his money to force me out. Mr. Henderson listened patiently. He was an old friend of my father's, and he knew how much this cabin meant to our family. He leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look on his face. "Your father was a very wise man, John. He foresaw this possibility. That's why he included a clause in the trust. It's a bit complicated, but it's there to protect the family's legacy." I had leaned forward, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and confusion. "A clause? What kind of clause?" He pulled a thick document from a filing cabinet and placed it on his desk. "Your father's trust states that the property is to be held in trust for both you and your brother. However, it also includes a provision for the transfer of ownership. It stipulates that if one of the heirs is able to prove they have been the sole and primary caregiver and caretaker of the property for a continuous period of at least 10 years, they can petition the trust to have the property transferred to their sole ownership." My heart leaped into my throat. 10 years? But I've been doing this for more than that. I've been coming up here taking care of the place for over 20 years, and since Dad passed, it's been a full-time job. I've paid for all the repairs, all the taxes, all the maintenance. Mr. Henderson nodded, a small smile on his face. "I know. Your father was a clever man. He knew that the one who truly loved and cared for this place would be the one to inherit it. He knew that he couldn't simply trust a will to the whims of his sons. He knew that a legal battle would be inevitable. He wanted to ensure the cabin remained in the family for the person who truly deserved it. He had then showed me a signed and notarized document. It was a transfer of ownership, signed by Mark himself years ago, when he was too busy with his new company to care about the details of the will. He had signed the document, thinking it was a simple formality, a way to absolve himself of any responsibility for the cabin. He had signed away his claim to the property. I had been shocked. My father had been playing the long game. He had seen the truth in his sons, the difference between us. He had seen Mark's ambition and my devotion. He had put a plan in place to protect the cabin from Mark's greed. And now I was holding the trump card, the ultimate weapon, the legal document that proved Mark had no right to this property. I felt a surge of cold, calculated anger. Mark had just told me to get out of my own home. He had no idea who he was dealing with. He had no idea that I had been planning for this day for years. He had no idea that he had just sealed his own fate. I got back in my truck, the engine roaring to life. The sun was setting, casting a long shadow over the lake. I was no longer a victim. I was a protector. I was the guardian of our family's legacy, and I was going to make sure that Mark learned a lesson he would never forget. I drove away from the scenic overlook, the familiar road now feeling like a battlefield. My mind raced, no longer consumed by hurt, but by a cold, calculating resolve. Mark's arrogance was breathtaking. He truly believed his money and status gave him the right to everything, even the memories and history I held so dear. His text message, "I'm serious, John. Don't come back. I'm changing the locks," burned a hole in my mind. He was trying to erase me from the very place that defined my connection to our parents. The cabin was more than a structure. It was the physical manifestation of our family's story. It was where Dad had taught me to fish, where Mom had taught me to bake her famous apple pie. It was where we'd spent every Christmas, huddled around the fireplace singing carols off-key. It was the one place where I felt closest to them, even after they were gone. And Mark, with a few careless words and a text message, was trying to tear it all down. I found a small, rustic motel in the nearby town of Tahoe, a place I knew well from years of coming to Tahoe. It was a no-frills place, but it was clean, and the owner, an old man named Walt, remembered me from my yearly visits with Dad. He gave me a sympathetic look when I checked in, probably sensing the turmoil beneath my calm exterior. "Everything all right, son?" he asked, his voice raspy with age. "You look like you've been through the ringer." I forced a tight smile. "Just a bit of family business, Walt. Nothing to worry about." He nodded, not pushing for more details. He was a man who understood the value of a person's privacy. "Well, you know the cabin's always there for you if you need a place to crash. Your dad was a good man, taught me how to tie a proper fishing knot." The simple words of kindness were almost too much. I felt a lump form in my throat, but I swallowed it down. "I'll keep that in mind, Walt. Thanks." I got the key to a small room with a window overlooking the back parking lot. It was a far cry from the majestic view of the lake from the cabin's porch, but it was all I had for now. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my laptop. I had a few things to do, a few calls to make. Mark thought he had the upper hand, but he was about to learn a harsh lesson. First, I called my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. It was a little late, but I knew he'd still be in his office. He was a workaholic, a man who lived and breathed legal documents. He answered on the second ring, his voice a little weary but still clear. "John, I was just thinking about you. How's the visit to the cabin?" he asked. "It's over," I said, my voice flat. "Mark and I had a disagreement. He told me to get out. He's trying to force a sale." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. "I see, he's making his move then." "He thinks he has the upper hand," I said, a hint of a smile touching my lips. "He doesn't know about the trust, about the clause Dad put in. He doesn't know I have the transfer of ownership document he signed." "And he won't until we're ready," Mr. Henderson said, his voice now crisp and professional. "This is a chess game, John. We need to play our cards right. Don't confront him. Don't tell him what you know. Let him make the first move. Let him think he's winning. The bigger his ego gets, the harder he'll fall." "What's our first move?" I asked, a feeling of anticipation building inside me. "First, we'll send him a formal letter. We'll acknowledge his intent to sell, but we'll also state that you are not in agreement. We'll use vague language, just enough to make him think he's in for a fight. He'll likely escalate, hire his own lawyer, and threaten a lawsuit. That's when we'll make our move. We'll file a petition with the court to have the property transferred to your sole ownership, citing the clause in the trust and the notarized document." "He's going to be furious," I said, a slow, grim smile spreading across my face. "Oh, he'll be beyond furious," Mr. Henderson said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "He'll be legally and financially crippled. He's made his bed. Now he has to lie in it. He chose to abandon his responsibilities, and now he's trying to claim the rewards. That's not how this works." We talked for a few more minutes, going over the plan, the legal strategy, the timeline. When I hung up, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The pain was still there, the disappointment in my brother, but it was now tempered by a sense of purpose. I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for my family's legacy. I was fighting for what was right. I then pulled up a digital copy of the trust document and the notarized transfer of ownership. I read them again, a feeling of awe for my father washing over me. He had seen this coming. He had known his sons so well. He had known that one would be a steward of the family's past, and the other would be a slave to his ambition. He had put a plan in place to protect the one who would protect the cabin. He had been a genius. I spent the next few hours in my motel room thinking about Mark, about our childhood, about how we had become so distant. We were once so close. We used to spend entire summers at the cabin, building forts, fishing, and exploring the woods. We were a team. I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment things had changed, but I knew it had something to do with his rise in the tech world. The more money he made, the more he changed. He started to see things in terms of profit and loss, not love and loss. He was so consumed by his own success that he couldn't see the value in anything that didn't have a price tag. He saw the cabin as a waste of space, a burden. He couldn't see it as a sanctuary, as a place of healing and memory. He was so focused on the future that he had forgotten to appreciate the past. And now his future was about to get a lot more complicated. I knew this fight was going to be ugly. Mark wasn't going to take this lying down. He would fight. He would threaten. He would use all the resources he had. But I was ready for him. I had a good lawyer, a solid legal case, and the truth on my side. And I had a piece of paper that proved he had no claim to the place he was so desperate to sell. I finally turned off my laptop and looked out the window. The moon was high in the sky, casting a silver glow on the sleeping town. The air was still and quiet, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I was ready. I was ready to fight for my home, for my family, for my legacy. I was ready to show my brother that some things were worth more than money. The next morning I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The knot of anxiety that had been in my stomach since the confrontation with Mark was gone, replaced by a quiet, steady resolve. I grabbed a coffee from the motel's lobby and went for a walk. The air was cold, with the promise of a sunny day. I walked toward the lake, a path I knew by heart. It was a good time to clear my head before the storm hit. I walked along the shoreline, watching the morning light shimmer on the water. The mountains were reflected perfectly on the glassy surface, a breathtaking sight. I thought about the conversation I'd had with Mr. Henderson. He had been so calm and professional, his words a lifeline in a sea of emotional turmoil. He had confirmed what I had suspected for a while, that Mark's desire to sell the cabin was not new, but a long-held ambition. Mark was a man who wanted to monetize everything, even our childhood memories. I found a quiet bench overlooking the water and sat down, my hands wrapped around the warm coffee cup. I pulled out my phone and checked for messages. A few from friends, a few from work. Nothing from Mark. The silence was unnerving. He was probably planning his next move, consulting with his own high-powered lawyers, drawing up plans to force a sale. He had no idea what he was walking into. I knew he would be furious. He was a man accustomed to getting what he wanted, a man who saw no obstacle his money couldn't overcome. To discover that I, the quiet, unassuming brother, had outmaneuvered him and that our father had orchestrated the entire thing would be a devastating blow to his ego. It wouldn't just be a legal defeat, it would be a personal humiliation. I took a sip of my coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. I felt a pang of sadness for the brother we used to be, the one who had stood beside me on this very spot, marveling at the beauty of the lake, the one who would throw his arm around my shoulder and say, "We're going to be okay, John. We've got each other." That version of Mark was a ghost now, replaced by the man who saw me as an obstacle to his financial gain. I spent the rest of the morning running errands in town. I went to the small hardware store where my father and I used to buy supplies. The owner, an old man named Gus, remembered me. "Hey, John, long time no see. How's that old cabin of yours still holding up?" "Holding up just fine, Gus," I said, a slight smile on my face. "Just stocking up on a few things, for the winter." Gus chuckled. "That cabin's a fortress. Your dad built it to last. He always said, 'A man's home is his castle, John, and a castle needs a good king.' The words resonated with me. I was the king of that castle, and I was going to protect it. I bought some supplies, a few tools, and some new batteries for the smoke detectors. It was all part of the routine, the small, mundane tasks that kept the cabin running, the tasks that Mark had never once offered to help with. I was the one who drove up here in the dead of winter to make sure the pipes hadn't burst, the one who shoveled the snow from the roof, the one who fixed the leaky faucets. It was my responsibility, and I had accepted it with pride and a sense of duty. That afternoon, a certified letter arrived at the motel for me. It was from a law firm in San Francisco, Mark's law firm. I ripped it open, my heart thumping. It was a formal notification of Mark's intent to sell the property. It stated that as a co-owner, he was exercising his right to a partition sale, and that if I did not agree to the sale, He would be forced to seek a court order to compel it. The letter was filled with legal jargon, but the message was clear: comply or we'll see you in court. A cold, hard smile spread across my face. He had made his move. He had shown his hand. Now it was my turn. I called Mr. Henderson immediately. "He sent the letter. He's trying to force a sale." "Excellent," Mr. Henderson said, his voice as calm as ever. "That's exactly what we wanted. Don't respond to it, John. Just forward me a copy. We'll file our petition with the court tomorrow morning." "Are we sure about this?" I asked, a flicker of doubt crossing my mind. "It's going to get ugly. He's going to fight." "He's going to fight, yes," Mr. Henderson said, "and he's going to lose. He has no legal standing. The trust is clear. The notarized document is ironclad. He signed it himself. He can't claim ignorance. He was given every opportunity to take part in the care of the property, and he chose not to. The law is on our side, John, and so is your father's foresight." I hung up the phone feeling a sense of empowerment. I wasn't alone in this. I had a team and I had the truth. Mark was about to learn that money couldn't buy everything, especially not a family's legacy. He had been so focused on his success that he had failed to see the one thing that mattered most: the love and devotion that our father had instilled in us, the love that I had for our home. That night, I went to a local diner and ordered a simple meal. As I ate, I thought about all the conversations I'd had with my parents about the cabin. They had both loved it so much. They had poured their hearts and souls into it. They had always said that it was a place for our family to come together, a place to find peace and solace. And now I was fighting to keep it that way. I knew this was just the beginning. The legal battle would be long and arduous, and the emotional toll would be heavy, but I was ready for it. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for my parents' memory, for their love, for their legacy. I was fighting for the very soul of our family, and I was going to win. The days that followed were a blur of legal formalities. Mr. Henderson filed the petition with the court, and a few days later Mark was served with the papers. I didn't get any calls or texts from him right away. The silence was deafening, a prelude to the storm I knew was coming. He was a man of action, and he was undoubtedly reeling from the news. His shock would soon give way to rage. I spent my time in the quiet of the motel room, working remotely on some freelance projects to keep my mind busy. I also spent a lot of time poring over the documents again, rereading the trust and the transfer of ownership, each word a confirmation of my father's wisdom and a testament to his love. He had known Mark, known his ambition, and he had protected the cabin from it. Finally, the call came. My phone screen flashed, "Mark," and my heart hammered against my ribs. I took a deep breath and answered, "What the hell, John?" His voice was a raw, unfiltered roar of fury. It was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "What is this nonsense? What petition? What trust? What are you doing?" I kept my voice calm and steady. "I'm doing what I've always done, Mark. I'm taking care of the cabin. I'm protecting it. I'm protecting our family's legacy." "Legacy? You're a joke," he spat. "You're trying to steal what's rightfully mine. That cabin is half mine, and you know it." "It was," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "But you signed it away, Mark. Remember that document you signed after Dad died? The one you were too busy to read? The one that absolved you of all responsibility for the cabin? The one that transferred your ownership to me if I proved I was the sole caretaker for 10 years? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the blood draining from his face, the realization dawning on him. He had been so sure of himself, so arrogant, so dismissive of anything that wasn't a quick profit, and now he was faced with the consequences of his own neglect. "You're lying," he finally said, his voice a strained whisper. "That's not what I signed. I signed some paperwork to help with the estate, nothing more. You're trying to cheat me." "I'm not trying to cheat you, Mark," I said. "I'm doing what Dad wanted. He knew this would happen. He knew you'd abandon the cabin for your business, and he knew I'd be the one to stay and take care of it. He set this up to protect the cabin and to protect me from you. I'll sue you, John. I'll take everything you have. You have no idea who you're messing with." "I think I do," I said. "I'm messing with the man who just kicked his own brother out of our family home, the man who saw our home as nothing more than a profitable asset, the man who forgot what family means." He hung up on me. The silence that followed was a relief. The storm had broken, and now it was time for the long, slow, and tedious legal process to begin. The days that followed were filled with calls from Mark's lawyer. They were aggressive, condescending, and full of empty threats. They claimed the document was fraudulent, that Mark had been coerced, that the trust was invalid. They were grasping at straws, trying to find a loophole in the airtight case Mr. Henderson had built. Mr. Henderson handled it all with a quiet confidence. He sent them copies of the trust, the notarized document, and a detailed list of all the expenses I had paid for the cabin over the years, receipts for repairs, tax payments, utility bills. It was a mountain of evidence, a clear and undeniable record of my devotion and Mark's neglect. "They're stalling, Mr. E." Henderson told me one day on the phone. "They're trying to scare you into backing down. They're hoping you'll get tired and just give them what they want. But you're not going to do that, are you, John?" "No," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not. This isn't about money anymore. This is about what's right." "Exactly," he said. "The truth is on our side, and so is your father's will. We'll proceed with the court date, and they'll have to show their evidence. And they don't have any." I hung up the phone and felt a sense of peace settle over me. I was on the right side of this. I was doing what my father would have wanted. He had protected the cabin from Mark, and now it was my turn to do the same. The days turned into weeks. The legal battle was a slow, methodical process, a game of chess. I stayed in the motel, occasionally driving by the cabin, a bittersweet ache in my chest. The locks were indeed changed. The Range Rover was gone. The place looked lonely, abandoned. I missed the sound of the wind in the trees, the smell of the pine, the quiet comfort of the home I had loved for so long. One afternoon, a friend from town called me. "Hey, John, I saw Mark in town. He was with a real estate agent. They were looking at the cabin." My heart sank. He was still trying to sell it. He was so convinced that he would win, that he was already showing the property to potential buyers. His audacity was a constant source of surprise and disappointment. I thanked my friend and hung up the phone. I knew what I had to do. I had to let him know that he wasn't going to win. I had to show him that I was serious. I called Mr. Henderson. "He's showing the cabin to real estate agents," I said. "I think we need to send a message." "I agree," he said. "I'll file a temporary restraining order against him. He's not allowed to sell or even show the property until the court makes a decision. He's overstepped his bounds, and we need to make sure he knows it." The temporary restraining order was filed the next day. A few hours later, I got another call from Mark. His voice was no longer filled with rage, but with a strained, desperate plea. "John, what are you doing? I can't even show the cabin now. My lawyer says this is a major problem. We need to talk. We can fix this. We can find a way to make this work." "It's too late, Mark," I said, my voice filled with a sadness that surprised me. "You made your choice. You told me to get out. You changed the locks. You've been trying to sell it without my permission. This is all on you. You're the one who broke our family apart. You're the one who's trying to sell our home." He was silent for a moment, and I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. "Please, John, we can talk about this. Let's meet. Let's sit down and figure this out. I don't want to fight anymore." "I don't either," I said. "But it's too late for that. You started this, Mark. And now we have to finish it. I'll see you in court." I hung up, my heart heavy. I didn't want to fight with my brother, but he had left me no other choice. He had betrayed my trust, our father's trust, and our family's legacy. He had chosen money over family, and now he was going to pay the price. The days leading up to the court date were the longest of my life. The tension was a palpable thing, a weight on my shoulders that seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind was always on the cabin, on Mark, on the inevitable confrontation that was coming. I knew he was getting more and more desperate. The temporary restraining order was a blow to his ego, a clear sign that he wasn't in control. I kept a low profile, avoiding the town and the local coffee shops where I might run into him. I didn't want any more confrontations. I wanted the law to do its job. I had done everything I could do. I had entrusted my future and the future of the cabin to Mr. Henderson and the legal system. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. I drove to the courthouse in Reno, the hour-long drive a quiet, contemplative time. The sky was gray and overcast, a perfect reflection of my mood. I was a man who preferred a quiet life, who preferred to fix things rather than fight about them. But Mark had forced my hand. He had shown me that some things had to be fought for. I met Mr. Henderson in the lobby of the courthouse. He was a beacon of calm, his face a mask of professional confidence. He carried a large briefcase, stuffed with all the evidence we had gathered: the trust, the notarized document, the receipts, the photos of the cabin's repairs, the timeline of my care. It was all there, a mountain of undeniable proof. "He's here," Mr. Henderson said, nodding toward the entrance. "He's with his lawyer. He looks agitated." I turned and saw Mark. He was dressed in a sharp suit, but it seemed to swallow him. He looked pale and haggard, his face lined with stress. He was a different man than the one who had kicked me out of the cabin. The arrogant bravado was gone, replaced by a tense, desperate look. His lawyer, a sleek, corporate-looking woman, was speaking to him in a low, urgent voice. Our eyes met across the crowded lobby. For a moment, all the noise and chaos seemed to fade away. It was just us, two brothers who had once been so close, now standing on opposite sides of a courtroom, with our family's legacy hanging in the balance. There was a look in his eyes, a mixture of anger and a flicker of something else, something I couldn't quite place. Was it regret? Was it fear? I didn't know, but I knew one thing: he was no longer confident. The hearing was in a small, sterile courtroom. The judge, an older man with a serious face, sat at the front, looking over the documents. Mark's lawyer stood up first, her voice a practiced drone as she laid out their case. She claimed the trust was invalid, that the notarized document was signed under duress, and that Mark had been misled. She painted a picture of a deceitful, manipulative brother who was trying to steal from his more successful sibling. I sat there listening, a cold fury building inside me. Everything she said was a lie. She was twisting the truth, trying to make me out to be the bad guy. I wanted to stand up and shout, to tell the judge the truth, to tell him what Mark had done, but I held my tongue. Mr. Henderson had told me to be patient, to let them make their case, to let them dig their own grave. When it was our turn, Mr. Henderson stood up, his voice calm and authoritative. He didn't waste time with flowery language or emotional appeals. He presented the facts. He presented the trust, the clause, the notarized document, with Mark's own signature. He presented the receipts, the photos, the timeline. He showed the court that for over a decade I had been the sole caretaker of the property, fulfilling the exact requirements of the trust. He then called me to the stand. I sat in the witness chair, my hands in my lap, and I told the truth. I told the judge about my love for the cabin, about my father's love for it, about the years I had spent fixing it and caring for it. I told him about the day Mark kicked me out, about the text message, about the changing of the locks. I spoke from the heart, my voice filled with a quiet passion. When I was done, the judge looked at me for a long moment, a thoughtful expression on his face. He then turned to Mark's lawyer. "Do you have any questions for the witness?" She stood up, her face a mask of frustration. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Miller, you claim to have a deep love for this cabin, and yet you stand to gain a considerable amount of money if the court rules in your favor. Is this not a case of a man simply trying to enrich himself at the expense of his brother?" "No," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this for my family. My father left the cabin to me because he knew I would take care of it. He knew Mark wouldn't. This isn't about me getting a fortune. It's about me protecting our home from a man who sees it as nothing more than a profitable asset." She was speechless. She had no more questions for me. She sat down, defeated. The judge looked at the lawyers, then at me, then at Mark. He then took a deep breath and began to speak. "Based on the evidence presented to this court, it is clear that the trust is valid, the notarized document is authentic, and Mr. John Miller has fulfilled the requirements of the trust. It is also clear that Mr. Mark Miller has consistently failed to live up to his responsibilities as a co-heir. The court finds in favor of the petitioner, Mr. John Miller. The title of the property is hereby transferred to him. The temporary restraining order is now permanent. The case is closed." A wave of shock and relief washed over me. I had won. It was over. I looked at Mr. Henderson, and he gave me a small, victorious smile. I then looked at Mark. He was staring at me, his face a mixture of disbelief and fury. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is not over, John," he shouted, his voice echoing in the silent courtroom. "You think you've won, but you haven't. I'll never forgive you for this. You've ruined our family." The bailiff stepped forward, his hand on Mark's arm. "Sir, please." Mark shook him off and stormed out of the courtroom, leaving his lawyer and his briefcase behind. He was a man defeated, a man stripped of his pride and his power. I stood up, my legs a little shaky. The judge had left the bench and the courtroom was emptying. I felt a mix of emotions. Relief, of course, but also a deep sadness. I had won the cabin, but I had lost my brother. I had saved our family's legacy, but I had destroyed our family's bond. I didn't know which victory was more costly. I stepped out of the courthouse, the grey sky still a perfect match for the complex emotions swirling within me. Mr. Henderson walked beside me, his briefcase now feeling lighter, the victory in his step undeniable. "We did it, John," he said, a genuine smile on his face. "Your father's foresight was remarkable. He knew you'd protect the cabin, and he made sure you could." "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice heavy with a mix of gratitude and exhaustion. "I don't know what I would have done without you." "You would have found a way," he said, patting me on the shoulder. "Your father taught you well. Now let's get some lunch. I'm buying. We have a lot to celebrate." We went to a small Italian restaurant near the courthouse, a place with red-checkered tablecloths and a cozy atmosphere. As we ate, Mr. Henderson went over the final details of the ruling. The property was officially mine. Mark had no legal claim to it anymore. I was now the sole owner of the cabin, with full rights to use, maintain, and live in it as I saw fit. The court had also ordered Mark to pay for the legal fees, a final stinging humiliation for him. "He'll be furious, of course," Mr. Henderson said, twirling some pasta on his fork. "But there's nothing he can do. The court's decision is final. He made his choice, and now he has to live with the consequences." I nodded, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I had won, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. The fight was over, but the cost was high. I had lost my brother, the last remaining member of my immediate family. I had a home, but I had no one to share it with. The cabin, once a symbol of our family, was now a monument to our family's destruction. After lunch, I drove back to Lake Tahoe. The sun had finally broken through the clouds, and the world seemed to be bathed in a new golden light. But the beauty of the landscape did little to lift my spirits. My mind kept replaying Mark's angry face, his final, venomous words. "You've ruined our family." Had I, or had he? Had I ruined it by fighting for it, or had he ruined it by trying to sell it? I didn't have the answers. All I knew was that something precious had been lost, and it was never coming back. I pulled up to the cabin, a sense of nervous anticipation gripping me. I had a new key, a copy of the official court order, and a sense of unease. I unlocked the door, the sound of the key turning in the lock a final, definitive click. The cabin was exactly as I had left it, but it felt different. It felt mine. The air was a little stale, a little dusty, but it was still filled with the familiar scent of pine and old wood. I walked through the rooms, touching the furniture, running my hand along the stone fireplace. It was all still there. The memories were still there, but now they felt a little heavier, a little sadder. This wasn't just a place of joy and laughter anymore. It was a place of conflict and loss. I spent the rest of the day cleaning and airing out the place. I opened all the windows, letting the fresh mountain air blow through the rooms. I swept the floor, dusted the shelves, and made a fire in the hearth. The crackling of the flames was a comforting sound, a quiet reminder of the warmth that once filled this home. That night I sat on the porch, a cup of hot chocolate in my hands, and I watched the stars. The sky was a vast, dark blanket, dotted with millions of tiny lights. It was a beautiful sight, but I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of loneliness. I was in the place I loved the most, but I was all alone. The next day, I started the process of settling back in. I went to the post office and had my mail forwarded. I went to the bank and changed the utility bills to my name. I was officially the owner. It was a strange feeling, a mix of pride and a heavy burden. I was now the sole guardian of our family's legacy. A few days later, a truck pulled up to the cabin. I tensed, my heart pounding. Was it Mark? Was he here to cause more trouble? But it wasn't him. It was a delivery truck. The driver was a big, burly man with a friendly smile. "John Miller?" he asked. "Got a package for you. Came from a law firm in San Francisco." He handed me a large, heavy box. It was full of Mark's things, his clothes, his toiletries, his laptop, all of it packed haphazardly. A final, impersonal act of surrender. He had sent his belongings back, a cold, silent gesture of defeat. He was gone, The silence from him was a final devastating blow. I took the box inside and placed it in the living room. It was a tangible reminder of the chasm between us. He had no more reason to be in my life. The fight was over, and with it, our relationship. He had chosen to sever all ties, to walk away from our family and our history. I sat on the couch, the box staring at me, a silent testament to our broken bond. I had won the legal battle, but I had lost my brother. The cabin was mine, but the cost was more than I had ever imagined. The sun was setting, casting long, dark shadows across the room. I felt a single tear roll down my cheek. I had fought so hard to save the cabin, but I had forgotten to fight for the one thing that truly mattered, my family. The weeks that followed were filled with a quiet, mundane routine. I fixed the porch railing that had been loose for years, a task I'd put off for a while. I repainted the window frames, a project my mother had always wanted to do but never got around to. I worked in the garden, planting new flowers, tending to the rose bush my mom had planted, a task that was both a comfort and a quiet, painful reminder of her absence. I was pouring my love and labor into the cabin, just as my father had taught me. It was a way of healing, a way of reconnecting with the place, a way of filling the emptiness that Mark's departure had left behind. But the emptiness was still there. The silence in the cabin was a constant, heavy presence. I missed the sound of Mark's laugh, the way he would argue with me over a board game, the way he would annoy me with his loud music. I missed him. It was a painful, complicated feeling. I was angry at him for what he had done, but I was also heartbroken over the loss of my brother. One day I found an old photo album on a shelf in the living room. It was dusty and worn, its pages yellowed with age. I sat by the fireplace, the crackling of the flames a soft, comforting sound, and I opened it. The first picture was of me and Mark as boys, sitting on the front porch of the cabin, our legs dangling off the edge. We were both smiling, our faces smudged with dirt. In another picture, we were standing by the lake holding up a fish we had caught, our father standing behind us with his arm around our shoulders. There was a picture of Mom, her hair blowing in the wind, a huge smile on her face as she looked at us. Tears welled up in my eyes. We were so happy then. Our family was whole. The cabin wasn't just a place. It was a sanctuary, a haven of love and peace. And now, it felt like a ghost town. I had a home, but I had no family to share it with. I had won the battle, but I had lost the war. I decided to take a break from all the quiet. I went into town to the local diner where I used to go with my dad and Mark. I sat at a booth, the same booth we always sat at, and I ordered a cup of coffee. The waitress, an older woman named Carol who had worked there for decades, came over to my table. "Haven't seen you in a while, John," she said, her voice warm and friendly. "How's that brother of yours? He used to come in here all the time when he was a kid. Never stopped talking." A familiar pang of sadness hit me. "He's busy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's in San Francisco. He's working on a big project." She nodded, a knowing look in her eyes. "Oh, I know all about that. My own son, he's in tech. He never has time for anything anymore. It's a shame. You get all that money, and you lose what's really important." Her words hit me hard. She was right. Mark had lost what was really important. He had lost his family. He had lost his home. He had lost his soul. I finished my coffee and left, feeling a little better. It was good to talk to someone, even if it was just for a moment. It was good to know that I wasn't alone in my sadness. There were others who understood the cost of a life lived for profit and a life lived for love. A few days later, Mr. Henderson called. "John, I have a message from Mark's lawyer. Mark wants to meet with you. Just the two of you, no lawyers. He says he wants to talk." My heart pounded in my chest. What did he want? Was it a trick? Was he trying to find a new way to get the cabin? Or was it something else? A part of me, the part that still loved my brother, wanted to believe it was the latter. The other part, the one that had been betrayed, was more cautious. "What do you think, Mr. Henderson?" I asked. "Is it a good idea?" "I can't tell you what to do," he said, "but I can tell you that you've won. He can't touch the cabin. He has nothing to gain from a meeting except a chance to talk to you. I think he might be ready to apologize." I thought about it for a long time. The thought of seeing him again, of confronting him, was terrifying. But the thought of never seeing him again, of never getting a chance to talk, was even more terrifying. We had to talk. We had to find a way to move on, one way or another. "I'll do it," I said. "Where does he want to meet?" "He wants to meet at the cabin," Mr. Henderson said. "He wants to see you on your home turf. He knows you're in a position of power now, and he wants to come to you." A small, grim smile touched my lips. "Tell him I'll be there," I said, "and tell him not to bring any lawyers." I hung up the phone, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and a fragile hope. He was coming to me. He was coming to my home. The battle for the cabin was over, but the battle for our brotherhood was just beginning, and I had no idea who would win. The day of the meeting was a beautiful one. The sun was out, the air was crisp, and the lake was a sheet of glass. I spent the morning preparing for his arrival. I made a pot of coffee, put out some mugs, and built a fire in the hearth. The cabin was warm and smelled of fresh pine and coffee, a scent that always made me feel at home. It was important to me that the place felt welcoming, a place of peace, not a place of conflict. He arrived promptly at noon, his Range Rover pulling up the gravel driveway. He got out of the car, looking smaller than I remembered. He was no longer the arrogant, slick businessman I had last seen. He was just a man who had lost a lot. He walked toward the cabin, his shoulders hunched, his hands in his pockets. He didn't look up at me as I stood on the porch. He just stared at the ground. "Hey, Mark," I said, my voice quiet. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. The anger was gone, replaced by a deep, heartbreaking sadness. "Hey, John," he said, his voice a whisper. "The place looks good. You've been taking care of it." "I have," I said. "Come in. It's cold out here." He nodded and walked past me into the cabin. He stopped in the middle of the living room, his eyes scanning the room, taking in every detail. He ran a hand along the fireplace mantel, the same way I had done a few weeks ago. He looked at the family photos on the wall, the same ones I had been looking at. He took a deep breath, and I could see his chest rise and fall with the effort. "I'm sorry, John," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was a fool. I was so wrapped up in my own life, my own success, that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. This place, it's not a commodity. It's our home. It's our family. And I tried to sell it. I tried to sell our history." The words hit me hard. He wasn't just apologizing for the legal battle. He was apologizing for everything, for his neglect, for his ambition, for his selfishness. He was seeing the truth for the first time. "I know," I said. "I know you were." He turned to face me, his eyes full of tears. "I was so angry when I found out you had taken legal ownership. I thought you had cheated me. I thought you had taken something from me. But you didn't. You saved it. You saved the cabin from me, and I'll never be able to thank you enough for that." I didn't know what to say. I was stunned. This wasn't the man I had expected. This was the brother I had missed. "Dad was a wise man," Mark said, a faint smile touching his lips. "He knew me. He knew I would try to sell it. He knew I would be a fool. He put that clause in the trust to protect the cabin and to protect you. He knew you were the one who loved this place. He knew you were the one who deserved it." We sat down on the couch, two brothers who had been on opposite sides of a courtroom, now finally on the same side of a living room. We talked for hours. We talked about our childhood, about our parents, about the years we had lost. We talked about his life, his work, his struggles. He told me about the pressure he was under, the constant need to be bigger, better, richer. He told me that his success had come at a cost, that he had lost his way. I listened, my heart heavy with a mixture of sadness and understanding. I saw the toll his life had taken on him. The success he had chased had left him empty, and the home he had abandoned was now the only thing he wanted. "So," he said, a small, sad smile on his face, "what happens now? You've won. You have the cabin. You have everything you wanted." "I have the cabin," I said, looking around the room, "but I don't have everything I wanted. I wanted my brother. I wanted my family. I wanted us to be a team again." He looked at me, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Can we?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Can we be brothers again?" I thought about all the pain, all the anger, all the years we had lost. I thought about the emptiness that had been in my heart, and I knew the answer. "Yes," I said, "yes we can. The cabin is ours, Mark. It's always been ours. It's our home, and you're always welcome here. You're my brother, and this is your home too." He broke down, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I put my arm around him, and he leaned into me, his head on my shoulder. It was the first time we had touched in years. We sat there for a long time, two brothers who had finally found their way back home. The battle for the cabin was over, and the battle for our brotherhood had finally been won. The weeks that followed were a testament to the fragile, beautiful process of healing. Mark didn't leave right away. He stayed at the cabin with me, sleeping in the guest room, the same one he had used since we were kids. It was awkward at first, a silent tension hanging in the air, but slowly, with each shared meal, each shared cup of coffee, and each shared story, the walls between us began to crumble. We went for walks in the woods just like we used to. We sat by the lake and skipped stones just like we used to. We talked about everything. Our childhood, our parents, our lives, the fight, the legal battle, the pain we had both been through. The conversations were difficult, but they were also cathartic. We were finally facing the truth, finally addressing the years of resentment and misunderstanding that had driven us apart. One afternoon we were sitting on the front porch, the sun a warm blanket on our skin. Mark was whittling a small piece of wood, a skill he had learned from Dad. He was a natural at it, a testament to the artistic side of him that had been buried under layers of corporate ambition. "You know," he said, not looking up from his work, "I used to think that the more money I made, the more successful I was. I thought success was about having a big house, a fancy car, and a lot of power, but I was wrong. I had all those things, and I was miserable. I was empty. I had no one to share it with." "You had me," I said, my voice quiet. He looked up, a sad smile on his face. "I know, but I was so busy chasing what I thought was important that I didn't see what was right in front of me. I pushed you away. I pushed away the one person who truly cared about me. I was a fool, John." "You weren't a fool, Mark," I said. "You were lost. You had to find your way back, and I'm just glad you did." He didn't respond, just went back to his whittling. But I knew what he was thinking. He was finally home. He had lost a lot, but he had gained something priceless. His family, his brother, and his peace of mind. He started to help me with the cabin. He helped me fix the leaky faucet in the kitchen, a job he had once scoffed at. He helped me stack firewood, his hands calloused and sore from the unaccustomed labor. He was no longer the arrogant businessman who saw the cabin as a burden. He was a man who had rediscovered the joy of a simple life, the joy of a life lived with purpose. One evening we were sitting by the fireplace, the flames dancing in the darkness. We were quiet, a comfortable silence between us. We didn't need words anymore, we just needed to be together. "I've been thinking," Mark said, breaking the silence. "I want to stay. I want to live here with you. I want to help you take care of the cabin. I want to be a part of this." I looked at him, my heart swelling with emotion. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the victory I had truly wanted. "You don't have to ask, Mark," I said. "This is your home. You're my brother. You're always welcome here. We're a team again. We're family." He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that I hadn't seen in years. "Thank you, John," he said. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I didn't respond, just sat there, looking at the fire, a feeling of deep peace settling over me. The cabin was a home again. It was no longer a place of conflict and loss. It was a place of healing and reconciliation. It was a monument to our family's love, not our family's destruction. A few days later, Mark's real estate agent called me. She was a professional, but her voice was filled with a palpable frustration. "Mr. Miller, I'm calling about the cabin. I had a few interested buyers and now Mr. Miller says he's not selling." "What's going on?" "The cabin is no longer for sale," I said, my voice calm and firm. "My brother and I have decided to keep it in the family. We've decided to keep it in the name of our parents." She was silent for a moment. "I see," she said, her voice a little deflated. "Well, I'll let the interested parties know. Thank you for your time, Mr. Miller." I hung up the phone and looked at Mark. He was standing in the kitchen making a pot of coffee. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. "She called," I said. "I told her we're not selling." She was a little disappointed. He laughed, a rich, genuine laugh that filled the room. "Good," he said. "Good. Let her be disappointed. This isn't a business deal anymore, John. It's a family legacy, and we're going to protect it." I smiled, my heart full. The cabin was safe. Our family was whole again. The fight was over and the victory was sweeter than I had ever imagined. We had lost our way, but we had found our way back home, and we had found our way back to each other. Life at the cabin settled into a new, comfortable rhythm. Mark and I had an unspoken division of labor, a natural flow that was a world away from the conflict that had once defined our relationship. He took to the outdoor work with a surprising enthusiasm, chopping firewood with a newfound strength and tending to the grounds with a careful eye. I focused on the inside of the cabin, repairing old furniture and painting the walls. It felt like we were restoring more than just a house. We were restoring our family. Mark's business in San Francisco was still a part of his life, but it no longer consumed him. He would still take calls and answer emails, but he would do it from the front porch, the fresh mountain air a calming presence. He had sold his Range Rover and bought a used sturdy SUV, a car that was more suited to the mountain roads and his new, simpler life. Our relationship was still a work in progress. There were still moments of awkward silence, moments where the old resentments would flicker in our eyes, but we always found our way back. We learned to communicate, to listen to each other, to be honest about our feelings. We were no longer two men fighting over a piece of property. We were brothers, learning to be a family again. One afternoon we were working in the garden, planting some new flowers. It was a quiet, peaceful moment. I was kneeling on the ground, my hands in the dirt, when Mark spoke. "You know, I had a meeting in San Francisco a few days ago," he said, his voice casual, "with my old boss. He offered me a promotion, a big one, more money, more responsibility, more everything." I stopped what I was doing and looked at him. "What did you say?" He smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile. I said no. I told him I was moving to Lake Tahoe to live with my brother and take care of our family's cabin. He looked at me like I was crazy. He told me I was making a huge mistake, that I was throwing away my career, my future. "And what did you say?" I asked, a lump forming in my throat. He looked at me, his eyes full of love and a newfound sense of peace. I told him that I was just starting my future. I told him that I had found something more important than a career. I told him that I had found my home. Tears welled up in my eyes. He had made his choice. He had chosen family over money. He had chosen love over ambition. He had chosen me. "Thank you, Mark," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "No," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder. "Thank you, John. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for saving me from myself. Thank you for saving our home." The weeks turned into months. The cabin, once a place of conflict, was now a haven of peace and love. We had visitors, old friends, neighbors, even a few of Mark's old colleagues who were curious about his new life. We would sit by the fire, drink hot cocoa, and tell old stories. We were a family again, a team again. One day Mr. Henderson came to visit. He was old and frail, but his eyes were still sharp, and his mind was still as a tack. We sat on the porch, a cup of hot coffee in his hands, and we watched the sun set over the lake. "Your father would be proud, John," he said, his voice soft. "He always wanted this. He always wanted you two to find your way back to each other. He knew the cabin was just a vessel. The real legacy was the love between his sons." His words hit me hard. He was right. The cabin was just a piece of wood and stone. The real legacy was our brotherhood, the bond that had been tested and had survived. "I still feel bad for him," Mark said, his voice quiet. "I mean, for Dad. He must have known all this was coming. He must have known we would have a big fight. He must have been so sad." Mr. Henderson smiled, a kind, gentle smile. "He wasn't sad, Mark. He was a man of faith. He had faith in you both. He had faith that in the end love would win. He just wanted to give you both a little push in the right direction. He wanted to make sure you had a home to come back to. He wanted to make sure you had each other." We sat in silence for a long time, the words hanging in the air. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, and the stars began to appear in the vast, dark sky. The cabin, once a place of conflict, was now a place of healing. Our family, once broken, was now whole again. We had lost a lot, but we had gained something priceless. We had gained our family. We had gained our home. We had gained our love. The fight was over, and the victory was more beautiful than I had ever imagined. The first winter with Mark back at the cabin was a lesson in the quiet beauty of a shared life. The snow came early and stayed, blanketing the world in a pristine, hushed silence. We spent our days chopping firewood, shoveling the driveway, and keeping the hearth fire roaring. We had a rhythm, a silent, comfortable understanding of our roles. Mark was the one who braved the cold, a constant blur of motion and purpose. I was the one who kept the inside warm and welcoming, the one who cooked and kept the place running. The cabin, once a place of loneliness for me, was now a place of warmth and companionship. We spent our evenings by the fire, playing board games we used to play as kids, reading old books and simply talking. Our conversations were no longer fraught with tension. We talked about everything and nothing, the news, the weather, old memories, the future. One night, a fierce blizzard hit, and the power went out. The wind howled outside, a wild, menacing sound. We sat by the fire, the only light in the room coming from the dancing flames. The cabin felt cozy and safe, a small, warm haven in a world of ice and snow. "I remember a blizzard like this," Mark said, his voice quiet. "When we were kids, Dad told us to stay inside, that we were safe. He said a man's home is his castle. He was right. He was right about a lot of things," I said, looking at the fire. "He knew what was important. He knew what mattered." "I thought I did," Mark said, his voice filled with a quiet sadness. "I thought money, success, power, I thought that was what mattered. I was so wrong, I was so lost. I didn't say anything, just put my hand on his shoulder. He looked at me, his eyes full of a deep, abiding gratitude. "You saved me, John," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved me from myself. You gave me back my life." The silence that followed was a comforting one, a silent testament to the bond that had been broken and was now being mended. We sat there for a long time, two brothers, a small, warm island in a sea of cold and darkness. The new year brought with it new hope and a renewed sense of purpose. We decided to honor our parents' legacy by giving back to the community. We started a small foundation, using some of the money from our combined savings to help underprivileged kids experience the beauty of Lake Tahoe. We wanted to give them the same experiences we had, the same love for nature, the same sense of peace and home. We took a group of kids up to the cabin for a weekend. They were from the city, and many of them had never seen a lake so big or mountains so high. They were in awe of the place, their faces a mixture of wonder and excitement. We taught them how to fish, how to build a fire, how to identify different types of trees. We told them stories about our childhood, about our parents, about the love that had built this home. As I watched them, their faces glowing in the light of the campfire, a sense of deep peace settled over me. This was what the cabin was for. It wasn't just a house, it was a place of love, a place of healing, a place of community. It was a testament to our family's legacy, a legacy of love and generosity. One of the kids, a young boy named Leo, came up to me. He was quiet, but his eyes were bright with curiosity. "Mr. Miller," he said, "is this your home?" "It is," I said, a smile on my face. "It's beautiful," he said. "It's like something out of a storybook." "It is a storybook," I said. "It's our family's story, and you're a part of it now." He smiled, a wide, genuine smile that lit up his face. He was a testament to the power of love, the power of a home. He was a sign that our family's legacy would live on, in the hearts of others. The next morning we took the kids back to the city. As we drove away from the cabin, I looked in the rearview mirror. The cabin stood there, a silent sentinel in the midst of the snow. It was a place of memories, a place of love, a place of peace. I had fought so hard to save it, and in the process, I had saved so much more. I had saved my brother. I had saved my family. I had saved myself. The foundation grew in the following years. Mark, with his business acumen, handled the logistics and fundraising. I, with my knowledge of the outdoors and the cabin, was the boots on the ground, leading the trips and teaching the kids. We were a perfect team, a testament to what we could achieve when we worked together, when we were a family. The cabin was now more than a home. It was a sanctuary for dozens of children who had never known the peace of a forest, the magic of a star-filled sky, or the simple joy of fishing in a pristine lake. We had a constant stream of visitors, a happy chaos that was a welcome change from the quiet loneliness that had once filled the cabin. One day, a reporter came to the cabin. He was from a national magazine, and he wanted to do a story about our foundation. He was a young man, full of questions and a quiet curiosity. We sat on the front porch, the sun a warm blanket on our skin, and we told him our story. We told him about our parents, about their love for the cabin, about their legacy. We told him about the will, the clause, the legal battle. We told him about our conflict, our broken bond, our eventual reconciliation. We told him about our new life, our new purpose, our new family. He listened intently, his pen flying across his notebook. He was a good listener, and he seemed to understand the heart of our story. He wasn't just interested in the legal battle. He was interested in the human drama, the family conflict, the love that had brought us back together. "So," he said, looking at me, "when you found out you had legal ownership, what did you feel? Was it a feeling of power, of victory?" I thought about it for a moment. "It was a feeling of relief," I said, "a feeling of validation. My father had trusted me. He had trusted me to protect our home. And I had." He then turned to Mark. "And you, Mr. Miller," he said, "what did you feel when you found out you had lost the cabin?" Mark smiled, a peaceful, content smile. "I felt a lot of things," he said. "At first I felt fury, I felt betrayed, but then I felt a profound sense of peace. I had lost a piece of property, but I had gained my brother. I had lost a business opportunity, but I had gained my home. I had lost a lot of things I thought were important, but I had gained everything that truly mattered." The reporter closed his notebook. "This isn't just a story about a legal battle," he said. "It's a story about a family. It's a story about love and forgiveness. It's a story about what really matters." He left a few hours later, and we went back to our lives, our peaceful, purposeful lives. The article came out a few weeks later. It was a beautiful, heartwarming story, a testament to our journey. It was a story about two brothers who had fought over a house and had ended up finding their way back to each other. The article brought more attention to our foundation, more donations, more volunteers. We were able to help more kids, to bring more people into our family. The cabin was no longer just a home. It was a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of love and forgiveness. One evening, Mark and I were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. The sky was a riot of colors: orange, pink, purple. It was a beautiful sight, a perfect ending to a beautiful day. "I still think about it sometimes," Mark said, his voice quiet. "The way I acted, the way I treated you, I still feel so much regret." "I do too," I said. "But we're here now. We're together. That's all that matters." He nodded, a silent tear rolling down his cheek. He wiped it away, and a faint smile touched his lips. "You know," he said, "Dad was a genius. He knew all along. He knew the cabin would be the thing that brought us back together. He knew it was the thing that would save our family." I looked at him, and for a moment I saw the boy I used to know, the boy who was my best friend, my partner in crime. The years of conflict and anger seemed to melt away, and all that was left was love. "He was," I said, my voice filled with emotion. "He was a genius." The sun finally set, and the stars began to appear in the vast dark sky. The cabin stood there, a silent sentinel, a testament to the power of love, the power of a family, and the power of a home. We had lost so much, but we had gained everything. We had found our way back home. The years that followed were a blur of peaceful, happy moments. Mark and I grew old together, our bond growing stronger with each passing year. The cabin was more than a home. It was a living monument to our family, a testament to our parents' love and foresight. The foundation we started thrived, and we were able to bring thousands of kids to the cabin, giving them the same love for nature and the same sense of peace we had. We had no regrets. We had lost our way, but we had found our way back. We had lost our family, but we had found our family again. We had lost our brother, but we had found our best friend. One day, Mark and I were sitting on the front porch, two old men, our hands a little gnarled, our faces a little more wrinkled. We were watching a group of kids, their faces alight with joy, as they fished in the lake. We were quiet, a comfortable silence between us. "You know," Mark said, his voice a little hoarse with age, "I was a fool. I had it all, and I was throwing it away. I was throwing away my home, my family, my brother. I was throwing away my life. But you didn't," I said. "You found your way back. You found your way back home." He looked at me, his eyes full of love and a deep, abiding gratitude. "Thanks to you," he said. "Thanks to you, John. You were the one who saved me. You were the one who saved us." A quiet peace settled over me. I had fought for this place, not for the money, not for the victory, but for this moment, for this peace, for this love. I had fought for my family, and I had won. We sat there for a long time, watching the sun set over the lake. The sky was a riot of colors, orange, pink, purple. It was a beautiful sight, a perfect ending to a beautiful day. The sun was setting over Lake Tahoe, casting a golden glow over the water and the surrounding pines. I sat on the porch a little slower now, a little more weathered. My hand, wrinkled with age, rested on the arm of the old rocking chair, the one my father had built. My heart was full, but a certain kind of ache, the one that comes with the passing of time, was present. Mark was gone. He had passed peacefully in his sleep a few years ago, right in the guest room he had reclaimed as his own. The emptiness he left behind was immense, a silence that had once again returned to the cabin. The joy of the kids and the foundation filled the days, but the quiet evenings were for me, and for the memories. I still felt his presence everywhere, in the neatly stacked firewood, in the whittled bird he had left on the mantelpiece, in the old photographs on the wall. He was gone, but he was also a part of the cabin, a part of our story, a part of me. The last conversation we had was a quiet one. We were sitting right here on this porch, watching a gentle rain fall on the lake. He had taken my hand, his grip a little weaker now. "I'm so glad," he had said, his voice a whisper, "that it was you who owned it, that it was you who saved it. I'm so glad I came home." I had squeezed his hand, unable to speak, my heart too full. I didn't need words. He knew. I looked out at the lake, its surface calm and reflective, mirroring the deep blue of the twilight sky. The cabin stood behind me, a silent, comforting presence. It was more than a home. It was a testament to our lives, our love, our struggle, and our forgiveness. It was a place where two brothers had found their way back to each other, a place where a family had been broken and then made whole again. I had fought for this place, not for a title deed or a legal victory, but for the soul of our family. I had won the battle, and in the end I had gained so much more than a house. I had gained a brother, a renewed sense of purpose, and the peace of knowing that I had done the right thing. The air grew colder, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the aspen trees. I pulled my blanket closer, my mind filled with a quiet gratitude. The journey had been long and painful, but it had led me here, to this moment, to this peace. The cabin was my home, and it was a beacon of hope, a place where a family's legacy was not measured in dollars, but in love, a place where a brother's betrayal was met with forgiveness, and a broken family was healed. I closed my eyes, a single tear rolling down my cheek. The stars began to appear in the darkening sky, a million tiny lights in the vast, silent universe. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I was here, in the home that had saved me, surrounded by the love that had healed me. The story of our family was still being written, and it was a story of hope, forgiveness, and the enduring power of a place called home.